Hey everybody, welcome back to Better Together. Today we have a wonderful Dr. Aviva Romm on, who is going to teach us so much. Heather, take it away.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about our guest today. Today we have Dr. Aviva Romm. She's a midwife and an internal medicine and board certified family physician with specialties in integrative gynecology, obstetrician, and pediatrics with a focus on endocrinology. She's also a world-renowned herbalist and author of textbooks, Botanical Medicines for Women's Health, which she's going to give us lots of scoop on that today, as well as 7 other books. She's a practitioner, a teacher, an activist, and an advocate of both environmental health and women's reproductive rights. She has been bridging the best of traditional medicine, total health, ecology, and good science for over 3 decades.
I mean, it's so special to have people on like this. This is exactly what we said Better Together is going to be about this year. We want to learn about our health. We want to understand how we can do it with herbs, and not only taking, and we're going to learn about this too today, not taking the medicine that is prescribed necessarily. There are a lot of remedies that help us and help every generation. She's going to teach us about each one of those things.
I think it's a total Cliff Notes episode if you want to listen.
Yes, absolutely.
And find out what herbs to take for if you're struggling with fertility, if you're struggling with menopause, or if you're just a 30-year-old who wants to be healthy. It's all in there, and it's not only about herbs. I don't just take herbs. I talk about chasing my melatonin with my Lunesta to sleep.
So we talk about all the remedies, and she's really it's a fascinating conversation. We hope you enjoy it.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.
So please tell us what kind of doctor you are, and where you began your study, and why we're lucky enough to have you here.
You have an interesting path to in your professional life.
It's a little different, isn't it? So I practice family medicine. I have an internship in internal medicine and residency in family medicine. And I treat women primarily, and also children. Because I always feel like, someone once said to me, a mom is only as happy as her unhappiest child. So I have to make sure that moms are happy by taking care of the kids too.
We say that all the time, don't we?
That is a really good rule to live by.
Yep. I grew up in a housing project in New York City. A single mom I was born in 66, I'm 55. And my way to get out of that housing project was to use my intelligence to apply to college really early. I was always kind of a science geek and a word geek. So I got into college when I was 15. Left New York City, found myself...
It was like Doogie Howser.
Yeah, right? But before Doogie, I was pre-Doogie. And I found myself in Western Massachusetts, in like hippie town, basically. And within a few months, I got exposed to herbal medicine and midwifery and organic food before there was really even a thing called organic food. This was 1981, right? My family literally asked me if I had joined a cult because I went vegetarian and started studying these things. And I left school at 16, apprenticed myself to a midwife, started studying herbal medicine in earnest. And before long, I was in my early 20s, I was practicing, having my own kids, and then kind of fast forward a whole bunch of years. Really wanted to bridge the gap between what was then extremely fringe. I mean, this was before it was cool to do herbal things and eat healthy. And decided to go back and do med school, which is what I originally went to college for in the beginning. So now, fast forward a bunch of years, I'm in my mid-30s, doing my prereqs, going to med school with 4 kids in tow at Yale. And along the way, had written a bunch of books, did a lot of leadership work, policy work for nonprofits. And here I am.
How are we so lucky to have so many amazing people on this planet? I feel just so lucky right now to have Better Together that we get to talk to these amazing people. You have 4 children and you went to college. Did you have a partner at the time helping you? How did you handle that?
I have had I met my partner when I was 15, and we have been together for 38 years.
Come on. Well, that deserves a congratulations. That in and of itself isn't an easy thing to do, no matter what you study, as we all know. That what a relationship. How old are your kids now?
They are turning 37, 34, 30 and 28. And I have a
gosh, for people listening, the doctor looks 37. 34. So
what?
Oh my gosh, thank you. And I have, the fun part is I have 2 grandbabies.
Okay, stop it.
No, I do. And they're 7 and 10. And it's really fun because my daughter-in-law is a pediatrician and my son is kind of a public health unicorn company creator. But they decided to have their babies at home, and I got to be the midwife for my 2 grandkids. So of all my credentials and accolades, that's what I love the most.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That's a
Okay,
very
well, we
unique
have so
story.
many
Nobody gets to
topics
say
to
that
dive.
about their mother-in-law, that they
Yeah.
delivered their grandchildren by themselves. That's incredible.
I don't even know where to begin because there's so much we want to talk to you about.
What's your favorite part of the study of herbs? And what are you focused on right now? Can we start there with women's health?
Yeah, so with women's health, right now, I'm really looking into how to bridge the scientific evidence, which is often quite lacking because there's not a lot of financial incentive for pharmaceutical companies and medical institutions are not studying botanicals because you can't patent them and make $1 trillion
money.
off of selling those,
Yeah.
right? Like you can with pharmaceuticals. So there's kind of a dearth of research. So how do we use botanicals in a way that we can feel really good about, really smart about, know that they're really working for us and that they're safe, sometimes even in the absence of this higher level scientific evidence. So I'm really interested in that. And then what is my favorite part? Honestly, with spring coming, this is so kind of nerdy, but I love when I find on a hike or just out in nature on my yard, wherever, the herbs that I'm actually using medicinally. It just gives me this incredible sense of connection to women going back generations and eons, that these same plants have been part of our healing, our diet, our medicine for so long. And it's just magical to find them.
If you could give us, I know that it's a very difficult question, but if you could pick maybe 3 herbs or a few herbs that would be the most beneficial to women, could
And
you?
why?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's one herb called Vitex or chasteberry. And that one I love because it's really universally beneficial. So it can help with period pain. It can help when you're not ovulating or having regular cycles. In studies looking at Vitex and women's hormone balance, the biggest quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, y'all, for you can't see me,
Right.
is getting pregnant and dropping out of study because you've gotten pregnant. So it's great for fertility. But now the latest studies on it also show that it's really beneficial for perimenopause and menopause symptoms. So sleep problems, mood problems, hot flashes, irregular cycles that start to happen when we're in our 40s. And, half of all women in the United States right now are already in menopause. So we're a force of nature. Mm-hmm. So having a botanical we can rely on throughout our life cycles and use for our daughters, use for ourselves, use for our sisters, et cetera, throughout our life cycles. I love that. So that's one herb.
Okay. Will you say that one more time for the people who went to go get a pen?
Yeah.
What is it called again?
It's called Vitex, Vitex, or chasteberry. It's the same herb. Chaste tree, Vitex, chasteberry. Another herb is really a simple one, and most people are familiar with this from cooking, and that's ginger. And you can use ginger in your cooking. You can use it as a tea. I love making it into ginger juice, just putting it through a juicer or making it into a juice with like pineapple and apple and carrots. But it is incredibly anti-inflammatory. It can be pain relieving. So a couple of studies have shown that just taking up to 2 grams of ginger a day, like in capsules as a powder, is equal to ibuprofen, which is amazing because ibuprofen can wreak havoc on your gut. And the other thing with ginger is, so it can help with menstrual pain, it can help with heavy menstrual bleeding, it can help with chronic pain, chronic inflammation, but also about half of all women struggle with some gut problems, IBS, gas, bloating, and ginger can help with that too. So I love ginger in everything, plus it tastes great.
So whenever we're eating sushi, get that ginger into our bodies because it's good for us.
Get the ginger.
I love that ginger.
I love
actually.
it too.
Yeah.
And then I would say my third favorite herb for women is something called ashwagandha. And a lot of people have probably heard of it by now. And it's in a class of herbs called adaptogens. And adaptogens have a history that goes back thousands of years. And what they do is actually help our stress response system adapt to stress and prevent all the physical and emotional and cognitive effects that can happen when we're overwhelmed, chronically stressed, a little bit on the edge of burnout, and kind of who isn't right now. And it also helps with sleep and some general musculoskeletal pain and inflammation. So those 3 are my go-tos.
Nice. Good question.
Okay. And what about kids? Or what herbs would you suggest for children?
Yeah, so with kids, you can definitely use herbs with them. I actually have my first book was Naturally Healthy Babies and Children, nice crunchy hippie book, but it's a beautiful book with a lot of different botanicals that you can use for kids, both preventatively, but also just when they have common run-of-the-mill symptoms. And it's actually quite important because antibiotic overuse, before COVID, antibiotic overuse and resistance was actually considered the biggest global public health threat that we had. And it's from overusing antibiotics. And part of it's overusing them in the food system because they're given to animals to prevent them from getting infection, but also to make them grow faster, like meat. But also they're widely overused in kids. So probably 70% of the antibiotics prescribed to kids are unnecessary. It's like a viral infection, or we should wait and see. So that's when I lean into things like echinacea. If your child has a cold or an earache, sometimes we can use something like echinacea to help with that. Elder for a flu. And of course, it's important to get conventional medicine if you need it for all the things. But if you've gotten the A-OK from your pediatrician to wait and watch on that earache or wait and watch on that cough and cold, those are some of the things you can lean into. Another thing is called, sort of the classic name is naturopathic eardrops, and that's just what they were called in this big study that was done on them. But for kids who do have ear aches or ear infections, you can actually use these eardrops made with a few different herbs. One is called mullein. Another is garlic. It's actually the same garlic we eat. And another is called St. John's wort. There are some cautions around it, like you want to make sure there's no ruptured eardrum. But that has been shown to be really effective in reducing pain and helping shorten the length of the ear infection, so you can avoid antibiotics when they're not necessary.
Oh, interesting. I know with my kids, I would always get the prescription, but then I would always wait. And it turned out probably I didn't need to give it to them. I would get the piece of paper because, you don't want to give it to them if you don't need to. So don't rush, if you're going that route of using the Western medicine, just don't rush
just
right
wait
to fill
for a
it.
second.
Yeah. Give it a minute.
And see and let their bodies react and change.
And if that's like new to someone or they're uncomfortable with it, there are good guidelines that you can use, and your pediatrician should be able to know. You can just go right to the Centers for Disease Control, and they have a whole list of how to know when to give the antibiotic or when you can wait. So if you're nervous about it, there's guidelines there.
Can you help me with, I'm going to go back to menopause since I'm now considered one part of your force of nature. So I'm going to go right with that. I'm one of those ones that's a force of nature. Is there anything for losing your keys every single day? I swear to God, is this something that is really true? The forgetfulness that goes on once you hit menopause. It sounds like an old lady. It sounds like an old lady thing. And I know for me as a kid, I was always like, the menopause, that's never going to happen. And the fact is, Heather and I talk about all the time, we feel like we're in the best stage of our life. We're in a very open, more loving, free place. So it's the opposite of what I thought when my mom, or whatever anybody talked about something like this. It's not old lady, but it does start to feel like that sometimes.
We don't know whether to blame it on, for us, we don't know whether to blame it on menopause or COVID, because we both had COVID. That's right. and so we're both like, what is happening to our bodies? And especially with forgetfulness.
Yes.
Yeah, COVID can definitely do a number on, we know it affects cognitive function, so it may be that you just need more recovery time. But I have to tell you, Anne, when you said, can you tell me anything about where to put your keys? I jokingly always tell my perimenopausal and menopausal women, well, the first place to look is in the freezer, because you were probably having a hot flash. You opened the freezer and put your keys down.
Oh my God. Funny. That is so funny. I looked in the refrigerator this morning. Now, I mean, I just have to say, it seems my logic, I'm a very logical person. And I'm a creative person, but I'm also very logical. I seem to have been erased of some of my logic components.
Well, let's talk about menopause for a minute.
No, so you're right. So I want to add a caveat here for anyone who's listening, particularly who might think, oh, I just heard a doctor say menopausal women are losing their memory. That's not what I'm saying. But there are some hormonal changes that happen as estrogen goes down. One of the things is that estrogen does shape the way our brain works. So there's a transitional period where you can actually be more forgetful of where you put things. It doesn't mean your intelligence or your IQ or your ability to do anything has gone down. But there can be those momentary, why did I just walk into this room? And a lot of women get worried like, oh, am I having early onset of Alzheimer's? And that's extremely rare. So unless it's happening frequently with other things, like you can't remember basic words, like you look at an apple and you can't remember what it's called, it's not likely to be Alzheimer's or dementia. It's just likely to be menopause. So that's one thing. The other thing that happens is sleep gets really affected a lot of times for menopausal and perimenopausal women. So when you're not sleeping as well, that can affect your sort of sharpness during the day. And so that's another big piece of it. So one of the things is just, it's like when you get called on in class and you know the answer, but then the teacher calls on you and you freeze.
Yes.
Like when you're worried about forgetting the word, or when you're worried about where you put your keys, it adds kind of like a layer of more stress that makes it even worse. So just take a deep breath, give yourself a moment to get quiet, and you know where you put the keys. Just kind of backtrack a little bit. And then trust that this will resolve. It will kind of right itself once your hormones start to level out. And that for most women is around 54. Like most people are going to go into menopause around 52. Perimenopause can happen for even 6 or 8 years ahead of that. But once your hormones reach that new steady state, they tend to be fine. And then doing everything you can to work on sleep, keeping your blood sugar steady, making sure you're getting plenty of good quality protein, good quality fats, the things that feed our brain, and exercise and hydrate.
Yeah, because I was going to say, what about the weight gain? That's just the worst.
Yeah, it's really annoying. I know. So here's what I'm going to say about that. What happens when we go into menopause is that our ovaries are done. They're just like, we don't need to make estrogen anymore because she's not going to get pregnant. We don't need to do this game anymore. So your body stops making most of its estrogen in your ovaries, but it has to make estrogen somewhere because estrogen is critical for your bone health, your brain health, your heart health, and a lot of other things. So what it starts to do is makes estrogen from your fat, the fat that's on your hips and your butt and your thighs. And so your body starts to put on a few pounds to have those extra fat reserves to make estrogen. So,
or 15 pounds.
I think it's really important. And this is not any easier for me than it is for anyone else, because I've definitely gained 5 pounds in menopause. Is to remember that your body's doing it for a reason, and that extra few pounds is actually really important. Actually, I heard, I think it was Tyra Banks. She said something when she went into menopause. She said, it's my face or my ass, basically. And that's another thing to remember with menopause is you may gain a little bit of extra fat, but that little bit of extra fat is also what keeps you from having more wrinkles. It keeps your face more supple, your tissue more supple. So figuring out how to find a little bit of peace with it, and at the same time doing all the diet things and the exercise things that keep it from being like 10 pounds and 12 pounds and 15 pounds and 20 pounds.
Like, don't go down the rabbit hole going like, I really need this estrogen, so I'm going to have that fifth burger.
And I do think, to Tyra's point, I had a friend whose grandma would say, you got to fill in the cracks. So she would eat ice cream. But I do think that as we age, I had gained a lot of weight during COVID because COVID kind of coincided with turning 50 and all this for me. And I just lost most of the weight that I gained during COVID, but I didn't lose all of it because I think that I have to weigh.
If you get any skinnier, I'm going to get upset with you.
You have to weigh more as we're older than we did when we were younger. That it doesn't, I think as we get older and if you look too thin, you just look frail.
I'm calling it mental pause, doctor, by the way. I love because I feel like my brain is on mental pauses sometimes. And I do the weight too, we live in kind of a different society where what we look at as body type is very different, I think, in the USA compared to most, say, European countries, where a woman's body and the curves of her body are preferred and celebrated. And
totally,
we don't do that here. We have these, this supermodel mentality. and it honestly, it's like outdated. Like I don't like seeing women that look like they haven't had a cheeseburger, you know, in the last week.
I know. I always love it when I'm watching like an Italian film or a French film, and I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
Right?
they're not all Botoxed, they're not all facelifted, and they've got bellies and they've got bodies. It's something very
Yes.
reassuring about that. And I was just talking. I was just quoting Sophia Loren this morning in a talk I was giving, saying how
She's on my
I remember
wall.
hearing her in an interview saying she credited everything she had to pasta.
Oh my God, I love it.
Okay, so one more thing I want to say about menopause and weight gain and as you said, mental pause is, and this is not going to be super popular, but probably one of the best things we can do for ourselves when we're in those menopausal and perimenopausal years is 86 the alcohol. And I don't know any patient of mine who was having menopausal sleep problems who, like, when she quit the red wine, didn't get better sleep. It's weird. Like, you think of red wine as healthful.
Right, but it's just red wine. We can still have white wine.
Yeah.
Any wine, any alcohol,
Uh-oh.
it seems to just make hot flashes worse. It adds to weight gain. It makes us look puffier, and it screws up our circadian rhythm and our sleep. So I always tell my patients, look, if you do want to have a drink, and I get it, because like by the time we get to 50, you know, that glass of wine or two at the end of the day feels like a really nice reward and more relaxing. And especially in COVID, like, you know, we all know what that felt like. So if you're going to have some alcohol, keep it to like 1 or 2 nights a week and lean into vodka or tequila or gin, because those white alcohols are actually a little bit less disruptive. They're not, I'm not endorsing them. I'm just saying.
I'm so
hear
glad
that.
you gave me the solution to wine, because I was worried there for a second. I can push into vodka or gin. Thank you, doctor.
That is not what she's saying to
I
get the
know.
vodka. But that's interesting because I will have wine because I think it's less harsh than like a hard alcohol,
Right.
but it's not.
I think it's more sleep disruptive and more emotionally disruptive for some reason. I mean, of course, everyone knows their own body, right? If you have a vodka and it's not working for you, then have what works for you. But the bottom line is just have a little less, have it earlier in the evening because it's less likely to disrupt your sleep. Have it with food, stick to 1 glass instead of 2 or 3. But anything too close to bedtime, that is so disruptive.
Interesting.
Well, I have noticed that, you know, and my drinking has changed as I've gotten older because it is disruptive. But for me, it's mostly disruptive when I wake up the next day because I feel it if I've had a couple glasses of wine more than I used to.
Right.
I feel I've taken to having like a, you know, if I am going to have more than 2 glasses of wine, I will have like electrolytes in my water. You know, before
you used to bring me Pedialyte just in case, like if we were traveling together, she would bring little packets of Pedialyte. What I would like to ask about is sleep, and we love the tips that you're saying, and in some of them I'll follow, and some of them I won't. I'm ready to pound a vodka right now. Okay, so you said go earlier. Don't tempt me with a good time. So here's what I would like to ask about sleeping, and it's because I've had some confusion with the herbs and overtaking them with melatonin, which just because it's herbal. And is it herbal or herbal? That's another question I have.
Depends if you're from the UK or not. If you're from the UK, it's herbal. Everywhere else, it's herbal.
Okay. So in herbal remedies, and you go into a health food store and then you look at the packets, I happen to not have on my glasses, and down I'll pop a couple of pills like, hey, they're herbal. My sleep was so disrupted, and it was because I didn't look at the directions or whatever. But is melatonin?
What did you OD'd on melatonin?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like I took 3 pills or something thinking, hey, they're just herbs. And I just want to, I mean, it's a cautionary tale, really. And I want you to explain the importance of, the amount we should take and why that's important to look at, because I do the same with weed sometimes. So I want to ask you about weed too. But first things first, what is a good herbal sleep remedy? Are the sleep teas good? I like the sleep teas, but to just calm and also help us not drink so much wine too, because they're really gummy.
Yeah, melatonin is kind of an interesting one because it acts as a hormone in our body, and some people just do great with it, and other people are just like, that was not for me. So my recommendation with melatonin is always start with the lowest amount, so 0.3 milligrams, and then work your way up.
oh God.
See,
I take 20 milligrams.
well, see, that's what I'm saying. That's why it gets confusing not to know.
Yeah, so start with a low amount and see, and just like slowly work your way up and find the dose that works for you. And you can go up like every few nights. And if you wake up the next morning and you feel groggy or even a little blue, you might just back down your dose. If you're at the lowest dose, just push through for a few days if you feel like you can. Like, it may take about 3 days to where you're like, oh, I actually feel great when I wake up in the morning and I'm sleeping well. A lot of people have really intense dreams on melatonin.
That's
So
what happened
again,
to me.
give it a few nights at the lowest dose. The other trick is taking it an hour or so before bed. Don't take it right before bed.
Oh, that's
okay. That's
helpful.
good to know.
Yeah.
And that might make a difference for you. As far as botanicals, as herbs, I love the one I mentioned earlier, ashwagandha. Again, it isn't just about helping you sleep. It's really about helping you reset that whole stress response system. So helping you have healthier cortisol levels, healthier adrenaline levels. So it has much more systemic benefits than just let me zonk you out. And it doesn't zonk you out, which is nice. You can take that with melatonin. You can use simple herbs like passion flower, even chamomile and lemon balm, which are so gentle. And then, of course, so many people are using CBD with really good results for a lot of people. But again, it's not for everyone. And you want to make sure that you get a CBD that really isn't psychoactive, because a lot of CBD products do have some THC in them. So again, start with a half a gummy or a quarter of a gummy. See how you do, and then work your way up. And really, all of those can be combined. You just want to start with one, see how you do, add another. And that's not so much for safety, but let's say you take 5 things at once and you don't feel great with it. You're like, I didn't sleep great. Yeah. Now you don't know which one it was.
Right. You have to be your own chemist.
No, yeah, I mean, I've had sleep problems for a long time, so I take melatonin, and I also have found that I also chase it with a Lunesta, if I'm going to be honest. And then
I don't even know what that is. What is a Lunesta?
It's a sleep aid.
Okay.
It's a pharmaceutical.
I love
sleep
that you
aid.
call it a chaser. I chase with an
But I
Advil.
also have found taking magnesium has been helpful for my sleep.
Magnesium is one of my favorites. It's probably my first go-to.
I take it every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what? And so, can you speak of those benefits?
Yeah, so magnesium, you can start at like 250 milligrams. You can go up to 500 or 600 milligrams. The thing you need to know is there are many kinds, but there are 2 basic kinds. The great one for sleep that's really easy to absorb is called magnesium glycinate. There's another one called magnesium citrate that works for sleep also, but it also gets your bowels moving. So if you're constipated, you can take the citrate before bed and have a nice benefit of better bowel movements in the morning. But too much of it can make you have loose poops, which isn't fun. So figure out that balance between the glycinate or the citrate. If you're not constipated, just take the glycinate. But magnesium is critical for calming down our nervous system. And it just nourishes the nervous system. It also helps nourish the adrenals, which are part of where the stress response is happening. And we also know from studies that a lot of women are low in magnesium. So adding a little bit, even above what might be in your multivitamin, if you take a multi, can be helpful. Taking it before sleep, again, maybe an hour, half hour before sleep, just a couple of 100 milligrams can really help you relax into sleep much more easily.
Yeah, I really noticed the benefits of the magnesium. What about going back to menopause? I know that, like, I had a whole panel of, my blood work and all of this. And one of the things that I started taking that I noticed that a lot of my friends, in talking to, everybody's taking D3, vitamin D.
Yeah.
Is that, can you talk to us about what sort of vitamin supplements people, going through, or any
And D
women,
is the sunshine, is the sunshine herb, right?
Right.
Yes, it
we
is.
don't get
Let's
from
talk about
sunlight?
what vitamins we should be taking at what age. So maybe let's talk about vitamins for people our age, and then talk about vitamins for people fertility age,
Sure. And you know what? Honestly, it's really not that different. So
Okay.
for all of us throughout most of our lives, taking a multivitamin is a great idea. it's always optimal to get everything we need from our food. But most of us aren't getting everything we need from our food. Either we're on the run and we're not getting all of our meals, or we're not getting all we need in our meals. But also the reality is modern agriculture, we know that an orange today has about 1/6 of the vitamin C of an orange that, let's say, our grandmothers would have eaten.
Right.
I didn't know that.
So sad.
Yeah, our food is just not actually as nutritious as it was. So a multivitamin is kind of like an insurance policy that you're going to get all the little vitamins and minerals that we really need for optimal health met. But most multivitamins don't have enough calcium for women our age. So once we hit about 4850, we want to get about 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day. You can, again, get it from your food, but most of us don't. And also, so many of us were following different diets where we might be dairy free or this or that free. So we're also cutting back on some of the foods that may have had those things in it. So I like to add a calcium in about 1,000 milligrams, and then vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is really interesting because, like melatonin, vitamin D is actually a hormone. It's not even just a nutrient, or it's not a botanical. It is, when we take it, our body forms it into a hormone that is essential for metabolism, healthy weight, healthy blood sugar, but also critical for bone health, as we might imagine the sunshine vitamin, and also immune health. So during COVID, for example, really robust studies showed that people who had low blood levels of vitamin D were actually more likely to get more severely sick with COVID.
Oh, wow.
And giving vitamin D didn't help reverse that once people were sick. But
Yeah, it's a
And
preventative.
both of these vitamins that you're saying, calcium and D3, is that for people of any age?
yes, for any age. Although if you're younger, you can use a little bit less calcium, like maybe 800 milligrams. But
D3 would apply to somebody in their 30s.
yes,
I'm just curious about the gender of it all, are these the same for both male and female? I know at this point probably most men who are listening, they're like, okay, this is a menopause conversation, but I want to know because I feel like men go through a similar thing. They just don't have a name for it or something. But are the vitamins
Yeah.
that you're saying, the preventative medicines? Does the D3 is that a good preventative for both men and women?
it is actually. These do affect women a little bit more in the sense that, for example, a really big study just came out, and it was a really good quality study looking at the impact of low vitamin D on autoimmune disease. Now, 80% of all autoimmune disease affects women. So women are much more likely, and autoimmune disease is serious. It's like one of the top 8 causes of death in women. It's not, it's not just like, oh, who has that? Autoimmune disease, that's weird.
Can you explain to us on a layman's level what that actually is, autoimmune disease?
So autoimmune disease is a collection of different conditions that affect us differently, but the common denominator in all of them is that it's our own immune system attacking our own body. And the different autoimmune diseases have to do with the different parts of the body that are getting attacked, or the different types of cells that are doing the attack. So one really common one is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, where people have hypothyroidism. Another really common one is rheumatoid arthritis. Crohn's disease is another really common one. And these mostly affect women. And the study showed that women who had better vitamin D levels actually were less likely to get these autoimmune conditions. So everything we're saying, men can get osteoporosis, men can get sleep problems. They don't really go through menopause so much. They do have
Right.
their testosterone levels do go down, but really it doesn't affect their estrogen or anything significantly. So they do go through changes, but it's much more subtle. It's later in their lives, and it more affects their libido than anything. Whereas we go through these massive overhaul changes that affect our bones, our brain, our heart, our hormones.
Let's finish our supplement. So we're on.
Okay.
We talked about taking. What did we talk about
Vitamin
taking?
D.
Vitamin D.
Yeah. So, okay. It's a multivitamin, vitamin D, calcium. I usually recommend a small amount of magnesium also, because the vitamin D, calcium, and magnesium is a great combination for bone, but also the magnesium for stress. And then if I have patients who are, or just women I'm working with who are vegan or vegetarian and don't get any fish in their diet, then I usually recommend fish oil as well. If you're getting a few ounces of salmon or sardines in your diet 2 or 3 times a week, if they're wild caught, then you don't need it. If they're farm raised, you're not getting those omega-3s. And so a fish oil is a great idea also.
What about, I know that as we age, our hair thins. And so I know I take biotin. Do you recommend taking biotin?
I don't, only because the research on biotin doesn't really show that it helps that much.
Yeah, I would follow that too.
So I usually recommend just a multivitamin because they usually have some biotin in them. It's in the B vitamin.
Okay.
So you usually get enough from that. Some of it is like just a really frustrating function of menopause for a lot of us. But some of it is stress and not sleeping as well. And, some of it we can buffer with some of the hormone the hormone support that we're talking about and the multivitamins and nutrients that we're talking about.
Right.
So I'd like to first of all, just could not be more grateful to have the help in summing this up with the preventative medicine that we've been talking about, the herbal medicine that we've been educated about to really help our sustainability as we go through the changes, and to not look so negatively at those changes, but embrace them as something we're going through, get the help that we need, and listen to the wisdom of our people on the show. Thank you very much for making us better together.
You're welcome. What you said, Anne, is really important and powerful about how we embrace it. There's some really interesting research that looks at different cultures and how women experience menopause. And what has been found is that, and I don't want to have this sound like I'm blaming women, that somehow our attitudes cause menopause to suck, because it can just really suck for some women. But in cultures that do embrace menopause, it seems that women have fewer disruptive symptoms. Some of that may be that there are other aspects, like people eating more plants in their diet or walking more or just living more healthfully. But some of it does seem to be how we feel about it. It kind of shapes our experience of it. So how can we, and I like to look at role models. I remember seeing Michelle Obama. She was like 58 on a nighttime talk show, and she was wearing like a cutout shirt with her ladies all pushed up and just looking smoking hot. Right? I think about Helen Mirren or Yoko Ono, and I'm like, these women are redefining sexy, smart, effing awesome. And so I looked to that, and I was about to be on an interview recently, and I was talking to a video interview, and I was talking to 2 young women who work with me, and they're in their 20s. And I said, it's really hard sometimes to be on video and be 55. And, I haven't done the face work and stuff. And they looked at me and they were like, Aviva, it's really hard to be on video in your 20s and 30s. Like, we're all struggling with how we look, and all the many points where we see ourselves on Zoom and on Instagram. And it was such a sobering reminder that it's affecting women at all of our ages, this how we look. And I think in menopause, it becomes so sharp for us when we look at ourselves and we see those 11s or whatever the changes are. But how do we love that? How do we just embrace it? Or do the face work if that's what you want. That's okay too.
Right, exactly. Whatever makes you feel good.
Is there any herbs that you would recommend for depression and anxiety? Because there's so much of that in our world at this moment.
Yes. So for depression, the best known, best studied, truly most effective herb is called St. John's wort. And probably tons of people have heard of it. And it really, really, really can work equal to Prozac and other pharmaceuticals without the side effects, including, those other pharmaceuticals, for example, they can just kill your sex drive. They can kill your motivation. So they make you feel calm and quieter, but then all that other stuff is affected. So St. John's wort, 300 milligrams 3 times a day. That's the dose. You can take it in capsules. So that's probably my favorite for that. And then for anxiety, my favorite is lavender oil. It's in capsules. There's actually, I don't usually mention brands, but this brand is actually the best one because it was the one that was in the studies showing that it worked. And it's called Lavella, Lavela. And you can just take 1 capsule right before bed. and it helps with sleep anxiety, but also helps with like performance anxiety, test anxiety. So I love that one.
Oh. So that could work for teenagers?
It can work for teenagers, definitely. And then CBD, there's a lot of things that are attributed to CBD that are completely BS. Like it doesn't help with all the things that people say it helps with, but anxiety is one that it really can help with.
Great. Well, go with libido, because that was going to be my question too. We want to add on a sex note.
Is there any? I'm curious about libido and fertility, both. Like, what would you recommend for either of those? Oysters?
Yeah.
Libido is so interesting because there are so many factors that affect our sex drive. Like for men, it's almost like a joke or a meme, kind of like men won't ask for directions, and it's, like these tropes that we have. But with men, they don't need a lot for the most part to get aroused. But right, it can be just like a physical thing. They can see somebody and they're like, she does it for me. Boom. Or bing, I should say. And then for us, for most women, it's like we want more. We want, and this is really evolutionary, right? We don't want to just do it and then have the person be irresponsible and walk away, because we biologically want the partner who's going to also stick around and be the good dad, right? Like that's how we're wired, even if that's not the motivation for having sex,
right.
Even if we're past that age. So we want connection. We want something physical that turns us on. We want touch. We want gifts. We want all the things.
Dinner and champagne, come on.
Or do we just want to go to bed and watch Netflix and be left the fuck alone?
Well, that's
the other problem.
Even for women in relationships with other women, it doesn't change our biological drive. We still want those things. So a lot of things happen, right? We're tired at the end of the day. We do want to just get in bed and watch Netflix. Or maybe you've been with someone like for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and now they're not 20 or 30 anymore. They're like 55, and he doesn't or she doesn't look quite the same. So the physical cues aren't quite the same. So there's a lot to unpack. And I think it's really important when our libido's low, not to just run and take the thing, right? Whether it's the pharmaceutical or the herb, but to really get honest in what we can do in the relationship. And sometimes it may be your partner doesn't look the same way. So you're like mentally fantasizing, and that's okay. You're thinking of what your partner used to look like, or you're thinking about what someone else looks like, but you're still there with your partner. Or maybe you need more stimulation or imagination or whatever the things are that make you get aroused. There's one study that looked at long-term relationships that found that this was done in heterosexual partners, but that for women who are in their 50s and above in long-term relationships, we're not necessarily as actively or proactively filled with desire, but we're receptively filled with desire. So it might not be like, let me jump your bone or let me jump your whatever, but it may be like, if you bring me a little gift or you stroke my back and give me a little massage, I'm all fired up and ready to go. So learning those things for yourself is important.
And it's a lot of these things too in conjunction. I mean, we're looking at, as we get older, different things change, different things shift. But when you talk about menopause and the point of view on it, finding the self-esteem and the way that we look at it and the perspective that we look at it, being able to communicate about it. When we talk about it, we let other women be able to communicate with us.
If your cooch is dry,
you don't want a dry cooch.
That doesn't help
you
either.
don't want to have sex. I mean, there's a given. But also when we look at whether it's a heterosexual relationship or it's just either way, the other is going through changes and shifts in their life, and looking at it with a perspective that says the growth of us can also be enjoyed and embraced. It doesn't necessarily mean, like you're saying, like I want to jump your bones like I did when I was 20, but acknowledging and being able to work through that difficult. I feel like once you get into your 50s, late 40s, you're working through a different part of your life, and that embrace of that shift and change, if communicated about, can become what's sensual. Maybe it's less, I want to jump your bones, but can you appreciate, like, I am a little tired, but I do want something a little bit different. Heather and I talk about this a lot, and being able to, we had a good show about it last week with Ryan, talking about our needs and our wants and our desires is something I want to remind and with the doctor on to say, when you tell the truth about what it is that you're going through, it embraces the other or another in your experience. And that's a turn on. It's a turn on different levels and in different arenas, but it brings in intimacy, and that intimacy can reflect in, I don't know why I'm saying this. I haven't had sex in forever, but but I think there are different ways that we communicate when we become adults, and we have different things that feed us. And I just want to, I love with you to look at the shifts in your life. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or 30 or 40, it doesn't matter, and embrace them in a way that it's not embarrassing to change your life. It's actually life growth and evolvement. I have Sophia Loren on my wall. Eat some pasta and feel your tits. Like let's but embrace it and enjoy yourself and that change, and it will allow others, because we get embarrassed to talk about what our changes are instead of sharing them. And that's what we're doing on Better Together.
So true. And it's so gorgeous to be at an age where, I remember Helen Mirren saying, like, if she could tell at 70, if she could tell her younger self anything, it would be to give a lot less fucks about things.
Right.
Zero fucks.
Yeah. Preaching to the choir on that.
Yeah. And part of it is like, that is about being able to say, this is what I want. This is what I need. And the beautiful thing is we are at an age where we're so much more empowered to do, like, I want to tell all the 20 and 30 year olds, don't wait till you're 50 to do that.
That's right. And it's our responsibility.
Yeah. And the thing is too, it's funny, like right now, 20 and 30 year olds are apparently having less sex than several generations prior, because they're all on their devices before bed or in bed. And women in their 50s and 60s are having better sex than ever.
Listen to that, kids.
So, because we know what we want, right? And we're not afraid to say, I want this or I want that. We're not embarrassed about our bodies in the same way. And if you have been with a partner for a long time, you pee in front of them. You do all the things in front of them, right? Like,
right.
Whatever.
Yes.
Can you hand me a tampon? All the things. Well, if you're in menopause, you don't need that anymore. But it's a beautiful thing to embrace that. And I wish we could all embrace it even earlier.
Well, and that's what we do Better Together for, so that the 20s and 30s go, listen, we know the joy, so embrace it earlier. I cut you off.
I just think it's great advice to deal with, to look at your relationship rather than go straight to a quick solve.
Yes.
Because that's important.
And that's really the clues behind why you're not feeling, all tickly. Look at yourself and the distance that you're putting between, first of all, yourself and then your partner.
And how are we judging ourselves? Anne, you said earlier about, our body image, right? And that can really change. So, women are struggling with body image postpartum. They've had a baby, their body looks different. That can affect their self-esteem, and that can affect their desire, but also affect their willingness to sort of be intimate and naked on every level. And then postpartum, in perimenopause and menopause, we're going through that same shifting self-identity.
We as friends and partners can help with that, because I know that we can talk about for days, like, embrace yourself, embrace, and when you're in it, you just don't feel great. And I think that friends and partners can do a lot to build people
reminders
up
to us,
and say, like, you look fantastic,
yes,
or you're beautiful,
encourage compliments.
And that's
I love that.
That's a nice thing to do, especially when somebody's struggling with body image, is just remind them how beautiful and fantastic they are. And that goes activation. That goes a long way.
It does. And for the 20s and 30s year old, it's fun to be able to have this conversation. It's funny. It's like, oh my God, now I'm going to feel bad when I'm pregnant. Now, the fact of the matter is, you're never going to be younger than you are today. So you might as well embrace that as a truth and go, well, hell's bells, it's not going to get better tomorrow. So why don't I enjoy what I am today? But for those generations, there are always, that's what we're called. We are evolving creatures. And there are things that are going to continue to challenge us. When you say that your assistants or the young women who work with you, they're like, wait, we don't have it any easier looking at our image. So you're struggling at 20. You're worried about yourself at 30. You're post baby at 40, and then at 50 you got menopause. So enjoy what you are today. Encourage
Totally.
your friends to enjoy it. Share what it is and activate the part of you that is involved with the self-involved in activating your self-esteem and doing that for others. I think that would be our active participation this week.
Totally.
Because it ain't going to get any better.
You know, I was in the shower not too long ago, and I remember having this judgmental thought about my changing body. And my body hasn't changed. It's not like I've changed that much either, but I remember having this sort of like self-judging thought. And I remember thinking, oh, like I judged myself when I was 30. And if I were 70 right now, I'd be wishing I were 55, right? And
That's
so
exactly right.
I just remember having this thought in the shower of like, when does it stop? When do the self-judging thoughts stop? And I just remember that day thinking, okay, it stops right now. Like I need to just shift these thoughts to like, I am in love with my gorgeous self.
Well, we're in love with your gorgeous self. I gotta
nice.
say,
I always-
this is
yeah.
that. You know what? Let's take that to heart.
We can't leave without talking about fertility because I brought it up and I just want to, I know that there's people listening that are waiting for that.
Okay.
So
We can have self-esteem and fertility.
let's talk about people either struggling with fertility or thinking about its time. And what would you recommend for those people? Lifestyle, herbs?
I feel like the most important thing is getting all the nourishment that our bodies need, especially the nourishment, not to be too reductionist, but like, what do your ovaries need to be optimally nourished and healthy to allow you to ovulate and allow you to grow a baby? And so it really comes down to getting a really optimally healthy diet. So we know that we need eggs for choline once we're pregnant for our baby's brain growth. We know that we need essential fatty acids to support baby's brain growth. Getting all the things now that you need when you're pregnant and all the things now that you need to nourish healthy ovulation.
So if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, are there different ways that you can supplement what those, you had talked about fish oil, but does it become necessary?
Yeah, I mean, vegetarians actually have most of the time, vegetarians have great hormone balance and really healthy fertility. It's not usually a problem. I personally was vegetarian for my till I got pregnant with my fourth baby. So I had 3 vegetarian pregnancies. The fourth one I ate meat. So I can personally say, no, you can totally do it. The main thing with being vegetarian or vegan is just to get the B12 and just get adequate protein. It can be really easy to start eating a lot of brown rice and other carbs and not get enough protein. So just making sure that you're getting the beans, the legumes, the nuts, the seeds. If you need to use like pea protein powder in smoothies, that's fine. If you're willing to eat some eggs, that's great because eggs are really beneficial for fertility. We know that having some fish in the diet can enhance fertility. And you really don't have to worry too much about coffee and alcohol because the studies don't show that it interferes with fertility. I mean, to excess, of course, but your, occasional glass of wine.
Well, that's how you get pregnant. You got to have that wine to get pregnant.
But nuts, the main thing is, are you ovulating? And the best thing to do is use an ovulation tracker. Either you can use a basal body thermometer and check it yourself, or you can get an app and track your ovulation. And if you're not ovulating, that's what you really want to work on and figure out what is going on that's keeping that from happening. And often you can just really shift that amazingly with diet, some simple supplements, some botanicals. Again, I mentioned Vitex, that chaseberry earlier, has been shown to be great for fertility. And there's some other things you can use. There's a supplement called CoQ10, which actually has been shown even with fertility treatments to enhance the outcomes of fertility treatments. And as much as you can, just get good sleep, exercise, and have all the basic things.
Some people that I've known that have had a hard time getting pregnant were, very thin and constantly diet conscious.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of let that go and make sure you're eating enough so that your body is ready.
I've worked with a lot of women over the years, and if they're underweight, the first thing I do is try to help them get to a healthy body weight, because you have to have, again, that fat to produce the hormones.
Right.
To support the pregnancy, but to even just get pregnant. You have to have fat to make cholesterol, to make estrogen and progesterone and all the good stuff.
And that's really scary to women with this body conscious thing. I'd like our audience, for everybody who's listening, to do what you did in the shower and say, I'm going to embrace today who I am. I'm not in that judgment anymore, because in trying to get pregnant,
That's really hard to do.
It's a very difficult thing to do. When you say fat, even if you say that to anybody, imagine a table full of, the tennis ladies, and anybody says you need healthy fat. When ladies hear that, they're like, don't tell me.
But you can say olive oil and avocados and almonds, right? That's all.
So that's what I want. I want the healthy fats, and to embrace that part of us that needs that.
One thing I want to say too is that we live in a time when all of us are being exposed to a tremendous amount of environmental chemicals that can and do interfere with our hormones. We're all exposed to a tremendous amount of stress. And these are things that are somewhat beyond our control. And it's so easy. Like, whenever I ask women this question, and I'll ask you all, when you have something going on either with your own body or with your kids, like if your kid is facing a challenge of any kind, what's probably one of the first questions you ask yourself?
What am I going to do?
How do you feel?
How do you fix it? Like
what am I doing wrong? Or what's wrong with me? And I really want...
It's funny, I don't ask that.
Yeah, I really want us to stop thinking that way when we have a hormone imbalance, when we have a fertility challenge, to remember that a lot of these things are bigger than just us. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not a lemon. And then from there, like, okay, what can I do to support myself to be as optimally healthy as possible so that I can try to do this through my own steam, but then there's also there's no shame in the game. If you need to use fertility treatments, there are still, all these things are still important, like all the fertility diet, the healthful eating. I don't love the word diet, but all the healthful way of eating for fertility. You still need that if you're going to do IVF. You're still going to need that to be pregnant and have a healthy baby. So it's just a simple low hanging fruit that we can all turn to.
Yes, and put our health first. Put our health first. Our happiness comes with it. And we just answered a beautiful question. And,
we can't thank you enough. This has been fantastic. You've given our listeners so much great advice.
Absolutely.
And it was so fantastic to meet you.
So everybody today, let's activate the non-judgment of ourselves. Look at our bodies, look at our mental health, our physical health, and our friendship and our love health, and say, I'm done with judgment, and I'm going to continue forward being better and reminding my friends and complimenting my friends. I love that.
I love that. And I know now you've written 7 books, and let our listeners know. I'm sure they're going to want more from you. Where can they find you? AvivaRomm.com, just at my website, or over at Dr. Aviva on Instagram. I hang out there quite a bit too.
All
Fantastic.
right.
Oh, it was
what a
such
beautiful
a pleasure.
speaker, beautiful healer you are. Thank you so much for being on Better Together and bettering us.
Thank you. Thank you for chatting with me today.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.
Wow. I was impressed by that. She was, by the way, 15 and going off to college.
Unbelievable. She was just such a bright,
we didn't even talk about that.
Woman.
I mean,
and having 4 kids, whatever, and going to Yale. Yeah, right. But I think what she did is break it down, to be able to break it down and understand the things that you can go to get that much help. All of the different, the education on the herbs.
We didn't
was
even
really
have to make a doctor's
to
appointment. We were able
exactly.
And neither did y'all.
I started to feel very lucky that on Better Together we can have all these. That's exactly what we're doing this for. I mean, we can hardly sum up the knowledge that she gave us. I was like, I'm going to have to listen to this myself, and I hope everybody did bring a pen and a paper.
Right, get all the good scoop on. We're going to get so healthy.
We're going to get so healthy and happy. But nobody's going to, and our libidos are going to be served by hopefully our self-esteem and everything else that we have going on, and complimenting our friends. I love how you activated that. If we give positive energy to our friends, make that your activation this week.
Say something nice to somebody.
Thank you, Doctor, for being on our show, and for everybody who was listening. That was so much fun.
Oh my God, we did just get better together, I think.
We did.
All right.
And a big thanks to our Better Together team, Ryan Tillotson, Silvana Alcala, Daniel Ferreira, and of course, Ann and Heather. If you haven't already, please subscribe on whatever device or platform you're listening to this on. And as always, see you next week.